Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit, and today we have some spoilers for Campaign 4 of Critical Role. So if you aren't caught up, I would recommend getting caught up before watching this video. Simple as that. Spoilers, spoilers, one more time, spoilers. Now it's just your fault. One more thing before we get started. If you are new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button because you'll get one video like this every week where I just talk about random shit. And then you'll also get another video every week where I do a recap of Critical Role Campaign 4 as long as there's something to recap. So if there's not something, it'll be another video that's random. But make sure you're subscribed. And if you're already subscribed, make sure you're still subscribed because, you know, you might not be and you might just get me in your feed a lot. So, yeah. Subscribe. So as you can tell by today's title, we are going to be finally making a prediction as to where I think everyone is going to be sitting, and what I mean by that is which table will everyone be sitting at. So we've got the soldiers, the seekers, and the schemers. Well, unfortunately, you know, as is tradition on this channel, every time I have a plan for something, things go wrong or, you know, go back into my face. And this time it was one of the tables has already been announced. So I do want to preface this by saying I was always planning on making this video for the third episode because the way that they described it was going to be episode 4 was going to be where they finally split off. But I guess that's not the case. The first 4 episodes was supposed to be like the overture. So it felt like to me like it was always going to be 4 episodes and then bam, everyone splits off into different tables. But that's not happening. So now we have 2 more tables to sort of guess, which will be the Seekers and the Schemers. But first, I kind of want to just talk about the Soldiers table because I think it's rather fun and interesting. And there are some characters that I didn't expect to be on that table. So let's get started. So making up the Soldiers table is Taor, Thimble, Cadigan, Wick, and Tyranny. This is a interesting bunch to be sure. There are 2 characters, Taor and Thimble, who I thought the entire time were going to be on this table. For a couple of reasons, actually. So one, just by looking at these 2 characters, I swear they're just built for being in combat most of the time, right? A rogue like this, we don't know exactly her subclass yet, but I just feel like she might be playing like an assassin or a thief character. So to me, while thief doesn't necessarily scream combat, rogue does really well in combat for the most part. They have high dexterity, so they have high AC, and then on top of that, they do a ton of damage from sneak attack, and realistically, there's so many options for a rogue now, they don't need help, realistically, on the battlefield anymore. If they get in one spot and they're able to stay there and steady aim, they're basically just a monster. So, rogues, to me, are built to be on the battlefield, and a paladin is very much the same way. They deal a ton of damage, they tank, they have a ton of healing that they can do to themselves and to others. They're just really good people to be on the battlefield. So for me, this is where they were always going to end up, because it just makes the most sense that these kind of characters would end up in the heaviest combat table. On top of that, Travis Willingham is just someone who's been pretty open about the fact that his favorite thing to do in D&D and at their table is combat. So if one of the tables is described as being a very like combat heavy table, that's likely where they're going to end up because that's what they enjoy the most. So that's what they want to see the most. And then on top of that, the last thing and the last reason I think these 2 were going to be ending up on this table together was the fact that I'm almost positive that they're going to be putting like married couples together. That way, scheduling, they can schedule the same shit. That way, driving, they can carpool together and they don't have to worry about it. If this way, you know, with them being together, they can just, you know, hire a babysitter or even bring Ronan with them if they have to, Ronan, their son. So realistically, these 2 being at the same table was, in my opinion, almost a foregone conclusion just for that purpose alone. The fact that they were going to be leaving couples together, and I just felt very strongly that they were going to be doing that. Imagine you for the next, like, for the majority of the next 3 years of you playing a D&D game, your significant other is not staring across from you. That would feel really shitty in my opinion, and I feel like that's why couples are going to end up at the table together, which might be a hint as to what I think one of the tables might look like for later. So these 2 made the most sense to end up at this table for those reasons. Now, we move on to Cadigan, Wick, and Tyranny, who I think are a little bit more interesting. So for me, when it comes to Cadigan is a character who we have virtually no information on at this point, other than at some point in time, he did serve in the Falconer's Rebellion, which means he was someone who was on the battlefield, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee that you end up on the Soldier's table. Maybe you're tired of combat. But he is also a mercenary type character, so again, that leans into him being in this position he's in. However, some of his toolkit, like the first time we saw him was him sort of taking a combat scene that happened with Thimble and sort of like breaking it down and like, you know, discovering what happened within, looking at the clues, casting a spell, and like literally like being able to remake the combat that happened in his mind. To me, that just felt like someone who was going to end up on the Seeker's table. So when he ended up on this table, while it made sense for his character and backstory, I just feel like his toolkit kind of leans him into more of someone who's like gonna be on the Seekers team. That being said, he is gonna be good for survival and traversal. He's gonna be the one guiding the party for the soldiers table around, so he just makes a lot of sense. Like I said, he could have made it to basically any table with the exception of maybe the schemers table. I just feel like this character's stats and this character's like demeanor overall doesn't feel like someone who wants to get involved in any political or anything like that. So for me, he was sort of off the table for schemers, but I really did feel like he could end up at either Seekers or he could end up at the soldier table. So him being here makes sense, and I like it a lot. And I can't wait to learn more about him because they're going to a location in Timony where he seemingly has been and spending a lot of time recently. So we get to learn a bit more about him soon because I feel like out of everyone, he's the one we know the least about. Like even Valus, we know a lot about at this point. We don't know a lot about Cadigan outside he served with the Aussie and the Falconers Rebellion, and he's close to the people who were with him in that time. That's about it. Also, he's a drunk and he has a wolf. That's it. Realistically, as far as I'm able to tell, there's like no names and like backstory that we have for anybody else other than him and Wulfric. That's it. That's all we know about the character so far, so I'm excited to learn more about him from this table. So then we have Wick and Tyranny, who are honestly very shocking to me to be on this table. To me, they felt like characters who would end up in like the political scene of everything, right? Because of how like embroiled they seem to be. They literally have family who is going to be wrapped up in the political intrigue of the campaign. So for me, it's kind of shocking that they're not there currently, because it feels like that would be a really interesting spot and story for Wick to be in, for him to be this character who's like almost like some sort of puppet to show how cool the Condescent Creed is going to be and how awesome the light works, and he was supposed to be like the face of it all. For him to turn against them and to start working to destroy everything that family's built and to try to like build up like an actual faith in something real like that would have been really interesting for like Wick to be a part of, and for Tyranny to stand against her sisters, which would be really fun and really cool too. But that is not the case, because the idea of this is that they've been forced out of the city because of the way they had to save Teor, and like the fact that they don't necessarily agree with the Halavar family and with Tyranny's sisters. So it's been really fun to see like the adverse happen, right? You would expect them to stay in the city and be a part of it, but instead they have to be forced out of it. And I like the whole concept of like this table going up north to Timony to chase down and get revenge on Casimir, to find Sid, and to sort of just keep Wick and Tyranny out of danger, because they could in the future become characters who are very involved with the political stuff. I feel like at some point, out of all of these people at the table, Tyranny and Wick might be the ones to sort of shift and join a different table at some point, and then somebody else will shift and like take their spot. I feel like these two characters are not going to be the ones set in stone, but I feel like Teor and Cadigan and Thimble might end up staying here for the longest time. I could see Thimble at some point leaving to go be with Hal and be on the same team as him, but I don't know for sure. I do think that like these two, Wick and Tyranny, are going to be the ones who end up leaving at some point and switching tables. But I do like that they've ended up here because it's not where you would expect them to end up, so it's a lot of fun and I'm looking forward to that. So now, speaking about the soldiers being wrapped up almost, we can now move on to like my prediction for what I think the other two tables are going to look like. But before I do that, I do kind of want to like lay out the groundwork as to what I think the Seeker story and the Schemer story is going to be, as we do have a vague idea of what the Soldiers table is going to be doing for their story, which is seeking revenge against Casimir, finding Sid and hopefully saving him, and keeping Tyranny and Wick safe, at least for the time being, and keeping them out of the city. And of course, eventually we're going to learn about Cadigan and Timony and all the other places that we're going to. So that's the sort of story set up for the Soldiers table. Based on that, I feel like for the Schemers, they're going to be playing like the political game of the city, right? They're going to be trying to take down these sundered houses and, you know, like House Halavar, House Taconis. I don't think they're necessarily going to go after like House Davinos or House Royce. I feel like those are going to be like the houses that they actually represent, and even like the Loy house. Those will be the three houses going up against the other like sundered houses. And I feel like we're going to learn a lot more names, a lot more people, a lot more individuals. And we're going to have like these political rivals and people like Primus Taconis and other characters like that. Yanessa, Halavar, Wick's grandmother, they're going to be like the villains of that group. They're going to be playing the political game and trying to beat the Sundered Houses at that game, because it's going to be like the safest way to do it, if you will, because if they just try to go kill them, they're likely going to end up dead just because those are strong individuals, and also they're just going to end up looking like the bad guys. They're going to look like Thiazi. What you want to do is you want to make them look like political rivals and have them not necessarily be a Thiazi type. You would rather have them be like a Royce or a Davanos type, where they look against the other houses and look like actual people who could lead, as opposed to people who are just going to cause problems. So I feel like that's the sort of story we're going to get with the Schemers table. They're going to be trying to take down the Sundered Houses, or at least the bad Sundered Houses, with the political game. So now for the Seekers table, I think they're going to be going after items, or trying to understand items that Thiazi was collecting or had already left behind. And I think that's going to be like the entire crux of what they're doing. I don't think we're going to be like going after like ways to sort of revive the gods or anything like that, but I think they're going to be going after like powerful magical items to somehow affect the political game, right? Or just to affect the world in general. Whatever Thiazi was doing, and I think this is where we're going to learn about Thiazi's like goals and motivations, like what he was trying to do with these things. I think this is what this entire like Seekers table is going to be about. And I think the first item they're going to be going after is going to be the Stone of the Night Song. That seems to be like the main target right now. So as of right now, that feels like what it's going to be the focus, and maybe the mask plays into it. So they're going to be looking for answers on the Night Song, or the Stone of the Night Song. They're going to be looking for answers on the mask, and they're going to be looking for like answers at like, because it seems as of right now the Taconis family were the ones who actually like bought things, but even like the Halavar family seems to have bought some stuff too. So they have these items potentially. So for me, the first place I feel like the Seekers table is going to go is they're going to be going to Castle Taconis, the one that sort of lies between the realm of living and the realm of death. I feel like that's going to be like the first thing they do. They're going to be going after that stone. They're going to be going after the Stone of the Night Song. Just to me, that's what it seems like things are going, like the direction things are going right now. So that's just what I feel like is going to happen. The Seekers are going after the items of Thiazi. The Schemers are going to be playing the political game, and the soldiers are going after revenge against Casimir. So with that being said, I'm going to try to make the Seekers team first. And for me, because they're going after the Stone of the Night Song, Velas will be going on this team first. I think that is her entire crux of her being in the story, and from there she's going to get wrapped up into it a bit more, but I do feel like if they're going to be going after the stone, that's her whole goal. She is going to be going after this stone, and it just makes the most sense to me that she'll end up there. On top of that, we're going to have Taisha going with her. Now for me, she could be a part of the political game, right? Like, she doesn't necessarily have to be at this table, but I feel like the way that Brennan has sort of set things up, Taisha is going to go with Velas no matter where she is, because there's going to be some sort of connection between like the whole Nightingale thing. And Velas knows that she has to sort of stay with her, and Taisha knows, because they both feel like they can find who they are with each other based on Brennan's description at the end of episode 3. So for me, those two are going to be on the same team, and it makes sense that Taisha goes with her because of, this is where Velas is going to want to go, and Taisha is just going to go with her to find herself. On top of that, if they're going after magical items that Thiazi was collecting, this to me just feels like Belair's story. Belair is the person who Thiazi would send shit to, and he would sort of figure out and then send off to other people, or, give back to Thiazi. This, to me, just makes the most sense to put him here. Not to mention, Belair is like a museum antiquator and stuff like that, so his whole thing is magical items. To me, this puts him in the perfect spot to be like in the Seekers team, like go after magical items. Not to mention, I've already mentioned how I think this is going to be going after like the stone, the mask, and other stuff like that. The mask is something related to Belair. The mask is also now related to Taisha. These three just make the most sense to end up on the Seeker table to me. Now, I know a lot of people think right off the bat that they're going to be, the teams are already in place. A lot of people think that Velas, Taisha, Octus, and Julian is going to be a team, and then that means Belair, Murray, Hal, and Azune is going to be a team. As you can tell, I disagree. So the last person on the Seekers for me is Octus. Now, initially, I felt like Octus was going to be a person who was going to be wrapped up in the political game, much like Wick was, because of his connection and family to, like, the politics of everything. However, based on the ending of the 3rd episode, I truly believe this is not the case. I think Octus is going to go after the Night Song Stone because his brother said, let's open him up and put the stone where it belongs. He is connected to that stone in some form or fashion, and I truly believe that he is going to have to follow the stone to figure out what the hell that means. So for me, the Seekers team, Valus, Taisha, Belair, and Octus, which means you guys can already guess what the Schemers team is, but these are my reasonings for why I'm putting these people on the Seekers team. So then obviously with the Schemers table, I have Julian, Murray, Hal, and Azune. So let's start with Murray and Azune for a second. These two people are who, the Sundered Houses are trying to almost fuck them out of their jobs. They're trying to remove them from their jobs because they can't be controlled, because these are honorable people. For the most part, we don't know if Murray is honorable yet, but she seems to be someone who wants everyone to have access to magic and to learn and to actually become something better than the station they currently have. So for me, these two characters are trying to be pushed down by the Sundered Houses, and they want to fight against it and push back up against them. So then these two characters to me just make the most sense to be in the Schemers team because of that. They want to beat them at the political game and be like, ha, we rose above our station and we beat you, fuck you. That's the sort of vibe I get from these two characters, and with their relation to which table they're going to be at. On top of that, we have Hal. So for me, Hal is obviously going to have to end up embroiled in some sort of political stuff as is, right? He wants to sort of embody theosophy, in my opinion, and sort of fight against the higher power that's above him, but he's going to do it in Hal's way, right? Hal wanted to do things and talk to people and communicate with people in stopping Theosophy's death. He went to Wick and sort of did something on his own to try to stop Theosophy's death, as opposed to working with everybody else who was trying to do something underhanded and trying to stop Theosophy's death. They were trying to set up a teleportation and then an escape carriage and then a place for them to all go and blah, 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 right? That was what was going on with Theosophy. Hal went a different approach. He went the more communicative approach. He wanted to talk to people. He went to Wick and asked him, hey, can you talk to your family and figure this out? And then the two of them were lied to. So that whole thing to me just puts him in a position of he's going to end up here because he wants to do things differently than Theosophy, but he wants to get similar results to Theosophy. So for me, him playing the political game just makes the most amount of sense because he wants to be involved in all of this. He wants to make change. He wants to fix things, but he doesn't want to do it in a violent, rebellion-ish way. He wants to do it by playing the political game. That's just the vibe that I get off of Hal. So for me, I could be wrong, and I might be wrong. Who knows? I'm curious to know what you guys think about what Hal's position on the Schemers table would be, because he's not a noble. He's not someone who's super big and super rich or anything like that. He's a guy who represents the people of the Rookery, right? Not necessarily a poor place. It's an artsy place, but he's not the richest dude in the entire place. Yes, he's well known. Yes, he's respected, but he's not a Sundered House. He is a man of the people. Right? Or to be more honest, he is the man of the people's brother. So I think that's a really unique place for him to be, and him being in the Schemers just fits too well. So then lastly, I have Julian, who I do think could be on either the Seekers or the Schemers team. Frankly, he could also fit in on the Soldiers team as well. But I feel like this is going to be the position in which we get to see the most change and evolution with him, right? This way he'll be able to stay near the Royce family. He'll be able to stay with the Davos family after the death of his father, because that happened last episode. So for me, him getting involved in all of this to get revenge against the people who killed his father, a person he never got to prove himself to, and then he gets to sort of rise up and beat everyone else. That's his whole thing. He wants honor. He wants respect. He wants people to understand who he is, and he wants people to know that he is a great person. Maybe not a good person, but he is a great person in his own mind. So for him to beat the other houses, to beat them down politically, would be the greatest victory, right? That's just the vibe that I get off of him. The idea that he's going to beat them at their own game after everything they did, because they did something underhanded. They didn't play a fair game here. They snuck in as ghosts and killed his father. So for him, he's going to be I could do that. I could kill you, maybe, but I could also tear your family down. And I feel based on what we saw at the end of that episode with him being in such shock the way he is, he's going to be filled with rage, and he might want to kill them physically. But at the end of the day, he might realize it's going to be better and it's actually going to do something if I play the political game and tear them down using their own system. And I think that would be a lot more fun for the Julian character. And I honestly feel that's where Matt might line things up. Now, on top of everything else, when I look at these tables, I do have to remind you of the couples rule that I do think is going to be put into place. So for me, Murray fitting on the Schemers table and Matt being on the Schemers table just makes too much sense, right? They're a couple, they're sticking together, and Murray, to me, while she could be a Seeker, they don't need that person if Belair is going to be there and Octus is going to be there. You want to sort of keep the Wizards separate because that's going to be a squishy-ass team if the two of them are together. So Octus and Murray being on separate teams makes the most sense, and then Julian being with Murray because Marisha and Matt are together. My final piece of evidence to why Julian and Murray are both going to be on the Schemers team. So just to do one last little roll call before we move on, we have the Soldiers team, which is going to be Teor, Thimble, Cadigan, Wick, and Tyranny. We have the Seekers team, who is going to be Valus, Taisha, Belair, and Octus. And we have the Schemers team, who is going to be Julian, Murray, Hal, and Azune. And at some point in time, I'm sure these teams will switch it up and be on different places. They'll do different things, blah, blah, blah. I do feel like eventually these teams will change, specifically characters like Julian. I could see once the Taconuses are dealt with, he'll probably go become a soldier, and then Wick and Tyranny come back down, and maybe I don't know, Valus goes up to soldier to sort of mess things up. You know what I'm saying? I feel like these teams will eventually get mixed up at some point down the line, and they'll switch up with what they're doing because their interests will change. But as of right now, these to me are what the teams will look like. So I'm curious to know what you guys think. Let me know what lineup you expect to see for Seekers and Schemers. We already know the soldiers, so I don't really need to know your opinion on that. But anyway, I think that's all I have to say. And until Friday for maybe a recap, I'm not too sure yet. I'm recording this on the weekend before the news update comes out, so we don't know what the schedule looks like. But maybe it's going to be a recap for episode 4. Maybe it's going to be a recap for the 4 Jester wedding. But I don't know. One of those two. Likely going to be a recap on Friday. And until then, peace. And lastly, I just want to thank the members of the channel. We have 2 members in the Bandit level, which is Tom Koch and Eric Cunningham. Hopefully I said your names right. And in the Rogue tier, we have Trent Lee's Tabletop. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. And if anyone else wants a special shout out at the end, just like these 3, become a member today.